All right, gentlemen, good evening. What is today? November 8th. 2 weeks out from Thanksgiving, 2 weeks out from conference. We have another special guest with us this evening. Gordon Hester has been kind enough to gift us some time from Florida in his busy schedule. If you don't know who Gordon is, he is an excellent guy. I was lucky enough to have some dinner with him over conference and just get to chat. I've known him for a couple of years now. Very grateful, very serving of our industry and our company. And we're lucky to have him here tonight. So a little bit of information about Gordon. He's an entrepreneur and business strategist. For 25 years, he was the CEO for Roberti Enterprises. You might recognize that name, Roberti. Although this was a conglomerate of various companies, it was best known for building one of the top 5 global direct distributorships in the history of direct selling industry, with sales in excess of $8 billion and a sales organization exceeding 100,000 distributors in over 25 countries. So massive, massive stuff. So during this period, he coached and trained thousands of entrepreneurs in North America, 15 European member countries, Israel, Australia. He's also a member of the Direct Selling Research Committee and speaks for the Direct Selling Education Foundation's Academic Expansion Initiative. Today, Gordon's consulting practice is focused on startups to mid-sized global companies. Most of Gordon's work is in marketing, branding, engagement, entrepreneurial, and executive coaching and sales force development. Gordon has also worked many young entrepreneurs in the digital and social marketing space, helping them build, market, and monetize their personal brands into scalable business ventures. In 2018, Gordon launched a global technology business called Shape Tech Solutions. Shape Tech Solutions is a boutique tech design and full-stack development firm with offices in both Sarasota, Florida, and Nice, Serbia. Shape Tech has an international team of business consultants, developers, and designers who are able to use both the global nature of the business and the wide range of experience and backgrounds to create affordable solutions for all clients. Shape Tech is in the business of providing transformative solutions and view technology as a tool that is used to shape the future of any company. The Shape Tech team has over 40 years of business experience and over 100 plus years of technical experience. For the last 4 years, Gordon has been on the advisory council for the entrepreneur program at Wake Forest University. He is also building the mentorship program for that program. He lives in Sarasota, Florida with his wife, Jackie. Their son, Connor, is a senior at Wake Forest University where he is studying business enterprise management. Connor is also actively involved in Gordon's consulting business and is a founding partner of Shape Tech Solutions. Their daughter, Callie, is a sophomore at Florida Southern and pursuing a degree in elementary education. So it's quite a resume he's got here, guys, and we are super blessed to have him with us. Gordon, I'm going to pin you to the top, and it is all yours, sir.
Thank you. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be on the call. It has, as on Jaron before, it has literally been over a year since I've spoken to a Juice Plus audience. So been really busy. Thought tonight it would be useful to share a little bit about the industry that we're all a part of, what's going on in the industry, a little bit of the history of it, and then more important, what's going on in the Juice Plus world and all the different challenges and opportunities we have, and why I believe still that the best is yet to come for the Juice Plus company. So let me get my PowerPoint on here. Okay, can everybody see this? I'll take that as a yes.
I can.
Yep.
Okay. Still see it? Okay, good. So I said the talk today is the direct selling industry and why Juice Plus is positioned for a better future. Really what I want to address in this presentation is a couple questions. First of all, I don't know how familiar everybody is with direct selling, but I can tell you when you look at the history of it, especially from a data perspective, it will probably change your whole concept and perspective of the industry. It's actually a very big, meaningful, proven industry, and I'll show you the data to help support that. Of course, within the industry, we're part of it, Juice Plus is, and I think it's important that we look at the challenges, which are really, to me, opportunities that exist today, because, of course, the more we solve these challenges, the more we pursue the opportunities related to them, the more successful we're going to be, and then ultimately why I believe the best is yet to come for Juice Plus. So let's start with the industry. You know, at the core of it, direct selling and network marketing is really just a way to sell products. What differs is who gets paid. So if you look at traditional retail, there's a manufacturer and customer in all systems. It's what's in between and how many people are involved. So in retailer, you have multiple paths for people getting paid. Online, same kind of thing. In direct selling, you have an entrepreneurial sales force. And to give you some perspective on the difference of sort of where money goes in direct selling, the entrepreneurial sales force tends to get paid somewhere between 40 to 50% of all of the gross sales of a company. So it's a model that really pays out a lot to the field. And that's a big part of what attracts people to it and why it's been successful. What it really is a form of social selling. So, originally social selling was about your warm market. It was about who you knew, and that's still always a part of it. We always start with somebody with who they know and trying to get them to be customers or distributors. But ultimately, it's really about leveraging social networks to find the right prospects, to build trusted relationships. And I will tell you, in the last 5 years, the industry has taken a massive change because of social media and all things technology and data. As I said, there's really two components of it. The one is pretty simple. That's selling goods and services to consumers. The other is entrepreneurial crowdfunding. So network marketing in particular was the first business model that I'm aware of that actually created an entrepreneurial sales force. And of course, we now see lots of people copying this. If you want to know what they look like, they have a name for them. It's called the gig economy opportunities. So, right now we have so many people in the world that are moving toward this micro-entrepreneurial crowdsourcing model. And of course, we are unique in that, and I'll explain to you why we're better than a lot of the gig opportunities as we get into this. There are really two parts of network marketing. There's direct selling and network marketing. Direct selling is what originally started the idea of having a company that you represent and being able to get customers for that company. In 1945, it all changed. This concept of network marketing was built. I don't have time to really go through the story of it, but what changed is you still had direct selling, but for the first time, you could leverage your time and be able to build a sales force of your own and be able to make a percentage of that. And of course, not only could that sales force have unlimited customers, they could have unlimited distributors. If you look at the industry right now, I think you would find it very hard to even find a true direct selling company. Even some of the traditional companies, so a good example would be Tupperware, which was originally a direct selling company, has now moved toward a network marketing compensation model. So for the most part, when I'm talking about direct selling today, I'm really talking about network marketing. If we look at the whole scope of direct selling, because we see it as distributors, we market customers and we find people to join our sales force, but the reality is it's much bigger. Ultimately at the center of everything is customers. Around that, we have this business ecosystem. We have direct selling companies. We have these massive entrepreneurial sales force that I'll show you the numbers on in a minute. And then we have this regulatory and lobbying body called the WFDSA, and there's 60 different divisions of this. The one in the USS is the DSA, and they pretty much are fighting all the regulatory and legislative values and challenges globally to ensure that our industry has a future and that things aren't done in those two environments that hurt the future of the industry. And then, of course, around that, you have suppliers and legislators and regulators and the public and external influencers, internal influencers, consumer advocacy groups, consumer trade groups. You had a growing academic environment. Talk about that a little bit later. You've got media, and then you have a pretty broad investment community getting involved in direct selling, whether it's investing in companies, whether it's buying companies, or whether it's starting companies and funding companies. Kind of a good example of that. Not too long ago, Rodan and Fields, which is probably doing about $1.3 billion a year, sold 25% of their company on a valuation of $4 billion. So we're finding more and more investment companies are looking at the industry. So when you look at the totality of everything, direct selling is this massive distribution model that exists all over the world. So the best way to understand it and kind of the history of it and where it's at is to kind of look at the data. So this is data point number one. If you go back and look at the historical sales of direct selling, you'll notice something about it. This data goes back to 91. I didn't take it back to 84 because I have data going that far back. But you'll notice this is an industry, for the most part, that has been in a long-term uptrend for about 26 years. It's starting to slow down. We'll talk about the reasons for that. Went through a pretty big growth period, 2010 through 2015. Primarily because of social media and some of the changes were there and the younger demographics coming in. But we are still in this long-term uptrend and probably no reason that this is going to change anytime soon. if we go and look at the sales force, so all these entrepreneurs that are involved with this, you start to realize, I've got the wrong graph in here. The global sales, this is the US sales, the global sales represent about 116 million people. It too has been in a long-term uptrend and actually growing faster than the sales. If I were to look at it and compare it to things, because I'm one of these people that likes perspective, and I look at the industry data compared to sort of economic data or population data, we know that over this time period, the sales have grown about 124% faster than the economy, 733% relative to population growth. If we look at the sales force growth, we see the growth of the sales force versus job growth to be over 2,000% higher. And when you look at the sales force, the population growth, it is even higher than that. So you begin to see the power of this industry and how unique it is, even to economic growth and population growth. Now, there's one thing that I want to mention, and this is a bit of a busy slide, but this doesn't tell the whole story. There's something in economics called a multiplier effect. And if you think about it, it's the idea that the industry just doesn't touch sales, it touches things around it. We employ people, we give back to things. And this gentleman, this professor from the University of Texas did a study on this and basically said the multiplier is 2.34. So if I were to take the US, for instance, in 2016, instead of saying sales were 35.54 billion, I know that the economic impact is $83 billion. And probably the greatest way to see this is direct selling, and the companies have always been big about giving back to the community. You know, the larger direct selling companies on average commit over 13,000 hours a year to supporting charitable events. If we look at things from a global perspective, you start to see the depth of the industry. So last time I looked at the data, there were over 170 countries that you can market products and services through direct selling, and 60 national or regional members. This is the WFDSA and all the stuff around it. If we start to look at the market, even though there's 170 million, there's something important to understand. It is very heavy toward the billion-dollar markets. And this graph you're looking at is all the billion-dollar markets that exist in order. So the US is the biggest market in the world, followed by China. My guess is next year, China will probably pass the US as the biggest market. But if you go down and really look at what this graph is telling you, these 23 global markets represent 93.3% of the worldwide sales. So obviously, the roughly other 6.7% is coming from all the other areas. And equally, they represent about a little over 87% of the sales force. So a lot of times we're talking about growing a distributorship, or we were talking about growing a market. If I was working with a company, this was something we would look at, you know, going to a proven market where the model's proven, where there's a lot of interest. And equally, it's very expensive to expand a direct selling company. So if you're, for instance, going into some smaller market, it can be really hard to build critical mass to be successful in the industry. If we look at things by sales, notice that the largest area is Asia Pacific. And you'll notice something if you know the Juice Plus story, that this is a market that we're not really in. We have a very small footprint. And that's a really good thing, because it begins to tell you the potential of what lies ahead as the company expands into that market. You know, North America is our biggest market. Europe is second. And equally, South America, South and Central America are markets that we're not even in. So from a global expansion standpoint, there's just a lot of possibilities to recognize. There's a lot of markets around the world and billion-dollar markets that we don't have any footprint at all in. If we look at it from a product standpoint, you begin to see that Juice Plus is in the most popular category, the wellness category. And it has been a category that has been growing for 10 straight years until 2017. 2017, things changed and the market went back a little bit. Probably the best news as it relates to Juice Plus is this really isn't our story. It went back because there's a lot of noise and chaos and competition in the weight loss space. But anything that is whole foods is traditionally been one of the faster growing areas of wellness. So really positioned well from a product category. If we just look at the US data, we start to see a very similar picture, a long-term uptrend, sort of dipped during the recession. You see this big run from 2010 to 2015, which was really the beginning of the social media run and a lot more technology coming in. And then you've seen the industry dip the last 2 years. And interestingly enough, 2017 was the most challenging year in all the years I've been collecting data, as I said, going back to 1984. We saw a massive loss of distributors. We saw recruiting down almost 10%. And the prediction in the research committee was things were going to be flat for a couple years in the industry, even though there's a lot of good things going on. The reality is it is continuing to drop, and even at a faster pace. We'll get into why that is, but more importantly, why that isn't the story for Juice Plus. If we look at it from Salesforce, same kind of thing. You see this big jump, and then 2017, you saw a fall off of that. So this might be, to me, the most important slide that exists in this whole deck, because it has to do with what I call organizing principles. So what really do you have to understand about network marketing if you're seeking relevancy and leadership in the marketplace? So if we want to be the best distribution market in the world and we want to have the best business opportunity, what do we have to do? And first and foremost, we have to understand that the customer is the foundation of all business. And this is something that is really evolving in the industry, because the customer has pretty much always been the distributor. There's been a big movement toward customer segmentation. There's a lot of focus on customer retention these days, because ultimately, historically, our industry has churned a lot of customers. And this is something that if we fix and we get better, the industry is going to have a major growth spurt because of that. You have to understand that the micro entrepreneurs are the lifeblood of the sales force. And what I mean by that, I don't care what company I look at, including Juice Plus, if I look at the distribution of the distributors, you'll find somewhere between 90 to 98% of all distributors are really part-timers. For us, that would be the dealer up to SC level for the most part. These groups, they call in the most customers, they recruit the most people, they're the highest percentage of sales. And I will tell you, if you cannot keep customers, you can't build a business. If you can't keep micro entrepreneurs, you can't create leadership. So there's this massive understanding and focus on how do we get these micro entrepreneurs to do better, because this is the group that churns the fastest. This is the group that comes in, lots of expectations, lots of excitement, and they tend to get out really quick. And this is something a lot of companies are working on solving. The third is, to me, one of the biggest myths that we populate in direct selling, this idea that everything's about recruiting and acquisition. And to be honest with you, it has been for years, because as an industry, we haven't always done good about what happens after we recruit a distributor or after we acquire a customer. That's engagement. The idea behind this is the strength of our industry is built off of relationships. It's always been that way. And the better we get at keeping people in the game, the more successful we're going to be at this industry. And then ultimately, if you look at this industry as a whole and say, what really separates the industry from all other business models, it's culture. Kind of a perfect example is Juice Plus. I'll talk about when we kind of went cultural centric here in a little bit. But culture's always been the differentiator. Anybody that doesn't understand that, thinks it's products or opportunity or those kinds of things, simply doesn't understand how this industry works. The stronger your company culture is, the more successful you'll be. And the stronger your team culture is, the more successful you'll be. And ultimately, the better we get at these things, the more we find relevancy and leadership in the marketplace. Now, there is a high correlation between activity and success. You guys use a word for this a lot called a DMO. And I thought I would put down here what those activities were in case you weren't sure. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory: getting customers, the customer acquisition game; keeping customers, the customer engagement game or customer retention game; getting new team members, that's recruiting; keeping team members, that's distributor engagement; engaging in value-based activities, so the idea of what can we do to add value in the engagement game; development, so the idea of getting people to be better at skills and mindset and the things that ultimately make them more successful in business; And then the last one, this is a huge thing right now, is enhancing one's influence, the idea of branding and the expansion around that. How do I build a bigger audience, and how do I attract people with a bigger audience? And I will tell you, if this is the focus of your time, if this is where you're working on innovation, this is where you'll get the best result, because we know ultimately these activities are what create success. So let's talk a little bit about Juice Plus. There are really three cultural models that exist in direct selling and network marketing. One is opportunity-centric. So opportunity-centric to me is old school. This is an old trend. It's the idea of leading with the opportunity, the big why, the big promise of time and financial freedom. We know that this is a useful opportunity for startups because it's the easiest way to build critical mass. It's the easiest way to build sales and a network. But we ultimately know that opportunity centric models run for a period of time and they fall off. And I could give you example after example of companies that have had fast runs through opportunity, things changed and it fell off a cliff and they could never recover from it. So the idea of building a successful company, especially as a startup, is you start with opportunity, you build critical mass, and then you move to customer centric, which is really focused on getting and keeping customers in the game. And then ultimately, the next part of this is cultural centric, the idea that both customers and opportunity exist, and what we should be doing is marketing mission and culture and all things around that. And I will tell you, I've been through all of these journeys with Juice Plus. In the early days, back in the water and air filtration days, we were very opportunity centric. We could have written the book on that. And I saw it run very quickly from $1 million a month to $1 million a day in sales in roughly a 3-year period. And I saw it all unfold in a very short period of time. Some things happened. We saw a large drop in sales, significant, and watched over 500 NMDs live the business in roughly a 3 to 4 month period. So you can imagine what that did to the business and the company and all the things. And of course, the company was smart enough to recognize, well, that's not the right model. We need to kind of move into a different model. And this became the birth of the Juice Plus movement. This is when we got into repeat customers and got into Juice Plus. It's now the 25-year anniversary. I believe that Juice Plus was the model for what customer-centric would look like, talking about a business that has products that end consumers buy. Over 80% of the sales are still from end consumers, so customers that are not distributors. It is the foundation of everything. It is what people talk about when they talk about Juice Plus, this idea of being customer-centric. And I will tell you, this is the trend now. So people have begun to realize the product door is the way to build a company, but we're already ahead of that. So we went customer-centric early, and then, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, there was a period of time where things slowed down. It's like a 5 or 6 year period that the customer base wasn't growing, the sales were flat, trying to figure out what the next move was. And this is when the company began to build what's called the mission-driven model. The idea, I actually built a model for them, and I don't want to take credit for all the work that went into it because it's definitely a team effort. But I will tell you, switching to culture was a game changer. All of a sudden, let's call it 5 years later, because I don't remember the exact time period, you're talking about the customer base that maybe have been 350,000 AR customers. I think the last figure I heard now, it's about 1.1 million or 1.2 million. That is a massive growth in the customer base. And it went that way because we started pitching the movement of the healthy living revolution and the idea of inspiring healthy living around the world. And what we did was we addict people to culture. And because of that, we did a better job keeping the customers, and we did a better job keeping the micro entrepreneurs. And because of that change, the company's sales went from about 300 million to, I think the figure they put out for the DSN was about 750 million. So it's the best of times. And now that the culture continues to strengthen, everything in it strengthens. The opportunity gets stronger, the customer base gets better. So now people are looking at Juice Plus and starting to recognize, wow, you guys are really the next generation model. It is really about building a culture that customers and people want to be a part of. Ultimately, if you look at the challenges and opportunities, and I'll walk through some of these in more detail, You have challenges in the industry. I'm sure some of you are very familiar with these. You have challenges within Juice Plus, really opportunities, I would see it. And then there are shared challenges and opportunities. So let me just walk down this list because I'm going to spend most of my time. Our industry has a perception problem. And if you don't believe me, go out and talk to 100 people and see what they say about network marketing. I will tell you that the perception is an opinion. It isn't necessarily supported by facts. And if somebody were to ask me what is the main reason for it, I would tell you as an industry for many years, over 50 years, we have been over-promising and under-delivering on the opportunity side of things. So today we're starting to see a change to fix the perception, to fix the behavior that drives that. The first is there is a heavy focus on engagement. There's a much stronger focus on relationship building, not just recruiting people. This idea of like how many people can we get in the door and selling them one time and doing these bundling and high upfront sales is becoming sort of out of favor. And today people are really looking at keeping customers and distributors in the game. The second thing is we're beginning to see a modification of the income narrative. And this is something that I want to talk about because this is a big part of the perception problem. If you look at what we put out in the industry, we talk about the exception. We talk about probably some of the stories, some of you on here, the idea of full-time income or passive income or residual income or financial freedom, time freedom, all these kinds of things. But when you look at the data, when you understand the industry, what you recognize is those stories are real and there's lots of them. But for the large percentage of people, all network marketing will become for them is a way to earn meaningful part-time income. And a lot of people think that's really a step back. Like, why would you tell people that? Well, the reason you tell people that is because when they're earning meaningful part-time income, we know they stay in the business. There's actually studies on this. They call it the golden handcuffs. And we know that if we can get in the US a distributor between $300 to $500 a month, they'll tend to stay involved with the culture. But we also know there's a lot more involved with that. To give you some perspective on the income numbers, I created this chart. So the first is kind of what I call a journey map. So it's an idea of what does this thing look like over time. Of course, you got a prospecting phase. The micro entrepreneurs, 85 to 95% part-time. You'll see them somewhere making between 0 to 1,000 a month. You'll start to see some percentage of those build out into junior leaders. For us, that would be kind of your SSCs and QNMDs. You start to see their income rise, some to a point of having full-time income, and that's sort of where it is a stronger part-time income or full-time income. But as you can see, it's about 3 to 13%. If we go to the next level, which just to keep it as a Juice Plus story would be like NMDs, we're really talking about less than 2%, and we start to really see full-time income here. And then the bigger leaders out of that start to make significant income, and this is when they have a scalable business. This is when they have massive amounts of customers and really strong independent leaders. And it's this level where you really start to see the things that we promise to people: passive income, time freedom, and financial freedom. But ultimately, it's less than 0.2%. So if you think about it in terms of engagement, you understand that this is the perception problem. If this is what we market for everybody to chase, and 2 out of 100 people, or 0.2% get there, we're really setting people up with the wrong expectations, and we're not keeping them in a journey. The reality is you can't make full-time income, let's make part-time income first. So the idea of building a strong business and becoming an elite leader is to keep a strong and growing customer base, keep your micro entrepreneurs in the game, to train your junior leaders to become leaders, and in time you build something that you create really elite leadership. The other study over here is the largest income study that's ever been done on the direct selling industry. It was done by a professor out of Northwestern named Dr. Ann Coughlin. It was called the Join, Stay, Leave study. It looked at the income. I think there were 22,000 distributors involved in this. And as you can see, it tells the same story I've been telling, that what we should be promising to people is meaningful part-time income. And I want to just shape this in terms of something we talk about a lot. We use a word a lot, freedom. And if we were to talk about freedom, most people see it in the extreme. The ultimate idea being I can do what I want and when I want. The reality is I can give you a different definition for freedom that will help you understand how to walk somebody through the process. Freedom to me is nothing more than disconnecting from some form of suffering. So for a lot of people, if you look at the data that's out, making another $300 or $400 a month separates them from things they're suffering. Maybe they can make a car payment. Maybe it helps them make a house payment. Maybe they can send their kids to school. And what we realize is when we set people up, when we put their goals as these areas where they have pain or where they want to get away from suffering, then we begin to stack success. And over time, we keep people in the game and we build larger levels of income. Now, the next thing on here that we talk about is regulatory pressure. Certainly a lot of that. I will tell you that there are things that are going on that are really relieving this pressure. The first is, for the first time ever, the Direct Selling Association has built a third-party self-regulation initiative. We are now having other people oversee our industry. This is going to help every aspect. It's a pretty cool program. I don't have time to get into it right now. We are seeing more and more of an end consumer focus. You know, the idea the regulators say is, look, if you don't have end consumers, if people want you to buy your product without tied to the opportunity, what does it really say about the legitimacy of your business? And of course, we're way over what they would ever look as legitimate business, because the number they kind of play around with is about 51% of the sales. As I said, Juice Plus is over 80%. So we are in consumer focused. And then, of course, anything to do with earnings or product claims become part of what the regulatory pressure is. A lot of this going on right now because of social media and what people say. You're seeing a lot of distributor compliance issues. And so the regulatory pressure, I will tell you, for Juice Plus is minimal to zero. We don't really have a lot of that going on. We're sort of the model from a regulatory perspective. But the other part of this, the next thing is customer segmentation. So a couple of years ago, they began to ask a question, well, how much of the distributor base is really just wholesale customers and not distributors? And as you look at, here was the data the DSA released. On the right-hand side is sort of the before picture. You had $34 billion in sales divided by the number of people. You can see what the average sales are. And if you look at the breakdown, it was 9% full-time people, 49% part-time people, and 42% that weren't really here to build a business. They were here because they were willing to get products at a discount. I always think of them like a Costco kind of person. And then when we sort of pull out the business builders, what we call the real sellers, we began to realize that actually there's only about 9.3, there's a smaller number of actual distributors, which means actually the average distributor is making more money than what the numbers would indicate, because a large percentage of the sales force is simply customers. And this was also important because customers are not treated the same way as distributors. Sort of the journey for them is different. So now that there's this customer segmentation, you have people pulling customers out. You're starting to see a lot of traditional, what I would call mapping of customer engagement and how you keep them in. And I would tell you something, this is something Juice Plus is focused on too. They recognize a large percentage of their distributor base are really wholesale customers, especially the dealers and the DDs. And of course, they're going to focus on strengthening their customer, their belief about the product, and all things to keep them as customers, knowing that in all likelihood, some will turn into distributors, but a large percentage will not. If we go kind of next thing, independent contractor challenges, and I don't need to get into that, just know that they're going on. The industry's fighting that. It's an important issue. Feel like it's in our favor in the US. We are protected under an IRS provision as independent contractors. But when I move over to Juice Plus, so where are the opportunities? First and foremost for me is customer retention. So we bring in a lot of customers, and we have for a long time. And of course, the idea is how long can you keep them and at what level? So the idea with customers is not just to keep them, but to turn them into what I would call brand ambassadors, where they become almost like an advertiser for your product, where they tell other people. And that we know when that goes viral and they're a part of it, those are the ones that we tend to turn into distributors. The customer retention is a big issue, but here's why. There is literally a mound of data. I could have spent all night showing you the data that shows that really the success of business and the longevity of business is tied to a company's ability to create customer experiences, a customer journey. You start to see on the left-hand side just the difference it makes in more traditional business, in things like a stock market. And on the right side, which to me is one of my favorite graphs I have, it starts to show you how much the customer experience affects things. So if we go to a low level of a rating of a 1 to 3, that's where it starts. That's the base at 1.0. But if I can raise that up to a 10, all of a sudden I'm making, a significant, almost a 2.5 times increase in the amount of sales and revenue I can create. So I will tell you this, the data is pretty clear. The more you focus on giving people a good customer experience, the more you keep them in a journey, the more successful you're going to be. And there is just a mound of data. And as you can see, it talks about keeping consumers in and then being easier to sell to them, whether it's cross-selling or upselling. It talks about how they become viral in nature. I don't want to go through all these statistics because I don't have time to. You guys have the presentations, so you can go back and look at them, read them yourself. And as I said, they just go on and on. We even know that customers that are unhappy tend to tell the world with social media. They tell them more now than ever. Unhappy ones don't tend to complain, but the true enemy is indifference. And ultimately, people switch brands and switch products more so for the experience than they do for the product itself. So the message there is, at all times as a company and as distributors, we have to get better at customer care and keeping customers in the game. We do know, and this is a myth, there's a lot of people that think that direct sellers don't really have any consumers. And the fact is that they actually do. This was a study done by the DSA on a large group of the sales force, talked about how many customers that exist for each distributor. And as you can see, the largest percentage of distributors have 31 or more customers. That is pretty significant. And I will tell you, this is an area that Juice Plus can get much stronger at. We have the ability to increase the actual end consumers per distributor, and it would make a huge difference in terms of the sales. If we look at what consumers think about direct selling, we find that it becomes more favorable over time. There's been 3 studies on this, 2008, 2014, not 17, and 2016. As you can see, we know that the primary reason people buy is because they like buying from a person. We know that, about 1/3 of all customers will buy every month, if not more often. And a high percentage of customers that buy from direct sellers actually buy over and over again. Now, if you want to know kind of why, with what really works in retaining customers, there's a great message here because it's foundational to what direct selling is. The number one customer retention tool you have is relationships. This is what makes direct selling, investing into the relationships with your customers. And look at the things with it: regular personal phone call, ongoing consultation and coaching. And then you get into elements that are much more value-based, like discounts and sampling, loyalty rewards. But at the top of the list, it really comes down to a simple principle of why direct selling is direct selling, because ultimately we invest into relationships. And the more you do this with your customers, the more successful you're going to be. Now, if we go to the next area, which is expansion of customers, reps, and markets, let's go back to what we looked at before. First of all, right now in the markets we're in, I'm not aware of any market where we have even 1/10 of 1% penetration into the market. So if you look at it from the context of market penetration, 25 years into this, I feel like we're still just scratching the surface of the potential of this. We know that the products we offer are timeless. Fruits and vegetables aren't going out of favor. When we originally got into this, we believed that prevention was going to be the focus. We believed in the concept of fruits and vegetables. We had a product that had never been done before, did some pretty cool things to make it the most sold and researched nutraceutical product in the world. And today, the demand and need for our product is higher than ever. So we continue to see a growing demand, even though we're seeing globally the consumption of fruits and vegetables going down, even though the availability is going up. We continue to see the market in wellness to be driven by prevention even more so than performance. Of course, that's the focus of ours. And then probably the best thing is that we created this massive entrance barrier. So the company spent, I believe, in excess of $30 million into the research behind the product. And as I said, we're the most sold and researched product in the world, which creates a big problem for anybody that wants to compete against Juice Plus, because our research is what makes us unique. It's a big part of what differentiates our culture. And then if we look at the markets, and we just go back to the billion-dollar markets, you can see these are the markets we're in the yellow: the United States, Germany, France, United Kingdom, Italy, Canada, Poland, and Australia. But look at all the markets we're not in. And this is where you start to see the possibilities of what the future holds. If we kind of go down from this, of course, we talked about micro-entrepreneurial engagement. I will tell you, in my opinion, there is nothing more important than mastering cultural addiction. The idea of how do we keep customers and distributors in this journey. There is a myth that we populate in this industry, and that's that everything's about duplication. I do not believe that. I do not believe everything's about duplication. I think everything's about addiction. If I could take every dealer and every distributor you had and make them a customer for life, and I stop having them go away, look what it would do to the business. Look what it would do to your check and your distributorship and your field and your organization. We are in the cultural addiction game. One of these days, maybe I'll get back on a call and explain to you how this whole game works, because there's a lot of behavioral science to this. So we have lots of opportunities to grow in Juice Plus, because challenges are the opportunities, but then there's some shared challenges. So e-commerce has changed the way that consumers shop. In the industry, we talk about the Amazonification effect. I hope I got that right. The idea that Amazon has changed the way consumers see things, the way they buy. E-commerce has grown. In the US, e-commerce is controlled by Amazon and to some degree Walmart, because not only do they have the platform, but they have the distribution network. But today, you have to have websites and you have to have an e-commerce platform and strategies to compete, because more and more consumers are buying online. And of course, we know Juice Plus is continuing to focus on this and doing more and more to strengthen the e-commerce efforts, even lead generation. You know, you start to see more and more companies recognizing that these micro entrepreneurs and the field needs leads. Sometimes they have problems getting customers or distributors, and the e-commerce effort is really helping strengthen the lead generation process to give to the field. The gig economy, to me, is the biggest risk that we face in direct selling. And the reason for that is, for the longest time, we were the only true micro-entrepreneurial, meaningful, big business opportunity that existed in the world. Everything went to direct selling and to network marketing. And then a couple of years ago, a number of companies started recognizing, wow, this whole entrepreneurial crowdfunding thing is something we should look into. And you started to see the birth of what they call affiliates, now super affiliates. Companies like Uber, for instance, the idea that I can work off some algorithmic business program, they're going to give me customers, I just have to drive people around. And this gig economy has sort of taken a life of its own. The last data I read said that 1 out of every 3 workers in the US is involved in some type of a gig economy opportunity, some type of what Gary Vee would call a side hustle. So the gig economy is a challenge for us, and it's really a challenge because sometimes it presents a better business opportunity for the micro entrepreneurs. And the reason it creates a better business opportunity is because they get more value for the time they invest. What they don't have is what we have, which is the ability to build a network, the ability to leverage. And that's what makes network marketing unique. You won't find many people in the gig economy that have the income potential as people in the network marketing space. But I will tell you today, a lot of companies are looking at how these gig economies run, these algorithmic business models, to say, how can we take strategies out of this to get better at our business? And then, of course, the other thing is we're seeing this massive personal branding revolution. Social media has changed who's coming into our industry and what it looks like. People used to come in, we talk about what's the size of their Rolodex or their warm market. Now we have people coming in that have massive networks that move pretty quickly. I can think of literally example after example. Matter of fact, pretty much anybody I know that's going fast in network marketing is coming in with a strong personal brand and a network. Kind of one example I can think of, one of the distributors I work in Australia, she just hit 100 Club. I want to say she's been in for 3 years. When she came in, I'm going to go to this model so you can see it. This is a model I built to understand branding. When she came in, she already had a brand. She had ideated it. She knew that people wanted it. She knew how she could add value to people's life. Her team understood that she was there to add value to them. So she had a brand, and she had already created visibility for that brand. She had come in with over 30,000 followers on Instagram. So with that, she had an audience. And because of that audience, she was able to do more prospecting, get people to buy the product, do more recruiting, and she began to build this tribe around her movement. And that's an important word, her movement. This idea is a lifestyle movement. And this tribe within it built its own brand. People built their own cultures within the culture. And this is ultimately how people move that go fast in our industry. They create brands, they create massive visibility, they create an audience, they turn that audience into a tribe, whether it's customers or distributors, and ultimately it all works around some movement. And when you do this, this is what we're seeing has the greatest level of success. So today when I'm working with distributors all over the world, I try to get them to understand that the game that we're looking at the front end of this is not recruiting, it's attraction. Because, and here's the difference to me, how many people, ask yourself this question, how many people do you bring into the business that ultimately you have to motivate or develop? And I will tell you that if that's most people, you'll start to understand why your business goes slow, because motivating people and developing them to be successful is very challenging. But yet, when you go and you recruit somebody that's proven in the marketplace, somebody that is self-motivated, somebody that's a self-learner, especially somebody who has entrepreneurial experience, and they come in and they commit to the industry, you start to see really fast results. And one particular story I'll share with you is one of the major distributors in Australia. I had worked with her for 5 or 6 years, sort of vacillated back between 24 and 39 Club, trying to figure out how to do it, got into this whole idea of how do you build an attracting brand, how to attract a different type of person. Kind of went through a whole process of this, was a lot involved with it, but she began to attract a different person, a different type of leader into her business. And I want to say a couple months ago, she broke 500 Club, and it was probably three and a half years after all this started. So I will tell you, if you really want to get your business going, this is really what's driving the speed of growth and changing the way our industry is being done. I wish I would have had literally all night to talk about this. We would talk about all the strategies and everything. It's amazing what you see in this. Just to give you a perspective outside the industry, because I work a lot with entrepreneurs. I work with one young lady that came to me when she was 17 years old. She was an Instagram marketer, had built a brand, 7 brands, had about 10 million people that were following her brands that she built from 14 to 17 years old, was in high school making about 53 grand a month. I stayed in touch with her. She recently, that number grew up to about 16 million people. And of course, her income grew with it. Now she's starting a cosmetic company. She's a millionaire at 20 years old. So people that know this game do very, very well in business today. And it's an important game to learn if you want to be successful in our business. And the other thing is it's really important that companies know how to manage this, because you can't over-manage and take autonomy away from people that value a personal brand. So a lot of companies try to figure out how this whole game works. The next part of this to me is really important, and that is about improving the time value proposition. So let me explain that to you. Time and value has to do with perception. So what we know, and I can show you from a study, what we know is if we look at people that come in the industry and we look at people that leave, and we start to say, why are they leaving? And you'll notice in both these studies, what does the first thing say? Not making enough money for the effort required. So we understand that at all times, especially these micro entrepreneurs that are trying to build a network so they can get more leveraged income, look at their business and say, okay, I'm investing 5 hours a week. What am I getting for it? And ultimately, the more we create value for time, the more we keep the micro entrepreneurs in the game. And it's important to understand that value isn't just money, but value is other things. So in 2016, there was a significant study done by Dr. Robert Peterson at the University of Texas, really interesting guy. And he really began to look at direct selling and from a skills perspective. And he began to realize that there were a lot of things that people got from this industry other than money. He recognized that it increased critical thinking, that it increased stress management, the ability to deal with stress. It taught better problem solving. It taught people to speak publicly. It increased time management. It created entrepreneurship, mindset, and skills. It helped with decision making. It helped with financial management. And the interesting thing about his study, and I'm happy to send this out to you guys if you want to read the whole study. It's not really that long. It's 5 or 6 pages, the summary of it. But what he really recognized was not only these benefits occurred after people left when they looked at it, but during. So they found that a lot of these skill sets translated into people's jobs, into their families, into other personal areas, and that a lot of time the real value that people got was personal development or potentially business development. And this is something really important. We have to understand that value isn't just money. Of course, it matters. If I go back up 2 slides and you look at why do people join and why do people leave, or why do they stay, we know that they join primarily for the product. The income makes a part, but all the other factors around it make a difference. But notice why they stay changes. All of a sudden, income becomes a bigger part of it. So we can't ignore that income is a part of it, but we also don't want to miss that the large percentage of the distributors won't make a lot of money. So this idea of personal development, business development, and addiction and all this kind of stuff is what really makes the business work. It's what really builds culture. And then we began to read, as you can see, another study here, full-time is growing actually. We're seeing more and more people purchase at a discount. Recognition is the second highest paid activity in the industry. If you want to make a difference in your business, map out how you can do recognition differently. I work with companies on this and doing pretty elaborate mapping of recognition strategies, and it makes a huge difference in keeping people in the game and, of course, the enhanced personal development. So if I go back to Juice Plus, the first thing we know is we are an end consumer model. We are the example in the industry with over 80% consumers. We know that if we hold customers, it will help us hold distributors, and it will increase the distributor income and the stability. So I think residual income is income from repeat customers. We know that the stronger our repeat customer base is, the more we will have distributor engagement and the more we can create leaders and passive income. And then ultimately, if you look at the company's strategy, the product strategy, one of their main criteria is, are we developing product for the end consumer? So if you begin to look at Juice Plus, absolutely end consumer product. Vineyard, absolutely. Omega, strong end consumer. Tower Garden, strong end consumer. So the company isn't like a lot of network marketing companies where they're trying to build a network of products and continue to sell more and more to distributors only. It is really the idea of building a stronger and stronger end consumer base, because that's what builds stability, growth, and longevity to the business. We also know that Juice Plus is heavily focused on modernization. So when I originally retired from working for Jeff in April of 2016, this is where I got pulled back into the Juice Plus world to be part of the modernization team. And there's extensive stuff going on behind the scenes with regard to technology. I want to say, if I recall what Paulo put out, it's like a $35 million investment in technology upgrades. And I will tell you, when this is done, we will be at the forefront. We will be the leaders of how technology works within a network marketing company. We're seeing more and more people use data. We're starting to see data on customers and on distributor engagement, just all levels. We're even starting to see people bringing in data like what they call attribution modeling, the idea of studying touch points to know where failure exists in some process or journey. So big data is growing. This idea of intuition is not as big as it used to be. Data drives a lot of things. There's a lot of focus on customer retention, the customer journey, certainly on the franchisee journey. So how are we keeping distributors in the game, keeping more of them moving up the career path, so moving up the marketing plan? And of course, with any company, it's like a field. The stronger the talent, the more success you're going to have. And of course, there's been a very concerted effort of continuing to strengthen the internal team so that they can do a better job supporting the field. So kind of here are my final thoughts, and happy to answer any questions you have. I don't think there's any doubt that Juice Plus is going to go through some growing pains. And by the way, they're not alone, so is everybody else. This idea of pursuing relevancy and leadership in the marketplace has never been more challenging, because the speed of change has never been what it is today, and it's growing by the day. So sometimes you can look at things and say, okay, well, what's happened in the last year? And by the time you try to pull what happened in the last year and the trends into your world, it doesn't apply anymore. Everything's become different. So it's very challenging to stay relevant. But I will tell you, this is the focus of Juice Plus. And as they go through these growing pains, all you're going to do is see the opportunity strengthen. And I personally think the company is probably a few years away from being the next billion-dollar company. And of course, a big part of that is not only doing what we do better from the customer point, the distributor point, but also with international expansion. So ultimately, if they continue to seek relevancy and leadership in the marketplace, I can assure you the best is yet to come. So on that note, I will be happy to answer any questions you have, assuming I haven't put everybody to sleep. And so fire away if you have any questions. I see there's some things in the chat here. Let me see if those are questions. Okay, well, first of all, thank you for the kind comments, and happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Hey guys, you should be able to unmute yourselves if you want to come on and ask Gordon a question. I'll unpin him so he can, actually I'll just leave you pinned, Gordon, for a few minutes.
Okay.
And see what they've got. But I just wanted to say a quick thank you for that. That was, I love the details and the information behind the industry and the company as a whole, because I feel like we just don't get to see that kind of stuff as much. Not that many people need to necessarily, but it is really cool to kind of dig in behind the scenes and kind of see, you know, the cogs in the machine, as it were.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to see the strength of the industry globally and some of the things that are going on, and the fact that this has been in a 26-year uptrend and continuing to grow. Because with the skeptics that don't know this, they sort of think everything's illegal pyramids and this kind of stuff, and the numbers tell a very different story. So does anybody have any questions?
Nothing.
None. My gosh, you guys must all be experts then.
Gordon, I have a question. This is Jim in Louisiana. How are you?
Hey there, how are you?
Good, good. We're all men on this call, on this Zoom. So talk for a minute about the opportunity that exists for us that may be a little unique versus the women.
Yeah, it's been interesting because forever and a day, the industry was about 90 to 10 women to men. So women have always been the foundation of this. A lot of stay-at-home moms. In the last couple years, it has changed. Now about 25% of the industry is men. And what we find with the men is they tend to bring in a much stronger full-time mindset. So they want to come in, they want to build something bigger. They tend to want to, they're not really in it as much for what I would call a part-time income opportunity. There's more that they want. Certainly they're bringing different skill sets. So I find the movement with men in this industry is growing, and especially at the younger part. So if I look at the Gen Y and even the Gen X, we're seeing a large percentage of men. We have markets in Juice Plus where the younger men are like 50% of all new applications. That's how much we're seeing men coming into the industry. I think it's great that all of you are joining together because men have always we kind of fit into three buckets. First, they're there to support their wife, who tends to be the one driving this. Eventually, a lot of them become part of that, and then many begin to build their own distributorships. And we also have a lot of men in the industry that are sort of the worst critics to their wives. So I think part of what we have to do with men is to educate them on the industry, because they tend to be very logic and fact and data driven, to understand what this industry is so that they can be a little bit more supportive of their wives. So we're bringing in a lot of new thinking. The roles are changing. And I think the importance of men in the industry is continuing to grow and will continue to grow.
So, Gordon, there's been a lot of talk about millennials. And what I can see in Juice Plus, it's mostly women. There's been a lot of discussion, you know, as labor market economists. There's a group of millennial males who have not been able to recover from the last recession, and they're very discouraged, not well educated. You know, in other words, they don't have an associate's or higher degree.
Yeah.
So how is it that it would be, how could we approach these fellas or make an opportunity for them to understand about Juice Plus and the whole business?
What's been interesting, that if you were to look at the, we'll just call it the Gen Ys, the millennials, across the whole spectrum of Juice Plus, in markets outside the US, we're seeing a lot of men millennials. A lot of the successful leaders are men. That hasn't really worked itself into the US. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, a lot of them have a very different profile. So the profile of success in the US is females, educated, middle to high income, working spouse. There's a profile that works for that. But in other markets, we're seeing these young millennials coming in and building massive networks. Because if you think about it from the context of economics, this is the first generation in the history of the world that was full digital. So they had phones and internet their whole life. So they're bringing in skill sets the rest of us don't have. And because of that, we're bringing in networks that we don't have. So it's not uncommon for some of these people to come in with these massive networks and to move very quickly. The interesting thing is keeping them in the game and getting them to play the right way, because they can be a little bit careless in the way they build distributorships, can be a little bit heavy on the opportunity. They don't necessarily manage their business well. I'll give you, for instance, in 2016, I was asked to come over to the UK to teach a 4-hour financial planning seminar to the leaders there, because the majority of those leaders who are making significant incomes had nothing to show for it. They were just living the dream, living to their highest check. And of course, we know that this is never a good thing. So part of the responsibility was to teach them financial management. I suspect in the US, it's only a matter of time before we start to see a growing millennial male distributor base, because we see it in other markets and it's amazing how well they do. So I think it's just going to evolve over here in that direction. I can tell you, having worked with a lot of them, I am a big fan of the millennials. I know a lot of people are critical of them. I find them to be hard workers. I find them to have a lot of talents that allow them to grow quickly in business. If they lack one thing, it's wisdom. And the question is always, are they going to listen, or are they going to have to learn the hard way? So in a great culture, there's always a marriage between all the skill sets that one generation has with the wisdom of the next. So when we see that marriage going on well, there's a lot of success in the business. But I think you're going to see more and more of them coming in over here. And if you look at it, a lot of them are very entrepreneurial by nature. So same with the Gen Xs. They want to own their own business. They want autonomy. They look at their parents' life and they're like, no thanks, I don't want that. I don't want to be controlled by a job. So we see more and more of the millennials coming in. And I think it's important, knowing that they're soon going to be the largest part of the workforce, to be able to attract them to your team, because they will be the leaders in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's an important part of the cultural transformation to bring them in. Yeah. Any other questions? I hear a voice, but I don't know where it is. It's kind of broken up.
This is Daryl. You were saying earlier about getting.
Hey, Daryl, you're cutting out. Put your question in the chat.
people in the industry, that 300 of retention is, can you talk? Yeah, my internet connection is unstable, Jerry.
Let me make sure I think I got part of the question. Are you talking about what I talked about, golden handcuffs, income,
Yeah.
and what keeps
Yeah.
people in?
Right.
Okay, so there's a company that is the #1 comp plan company in the industry. It's called the Jensen Group. And they have lots of data. And one of the things they tried to determine was, from an income perspective, what is enough meaningful part-time income to keep people in the business. And they have a formula for it. I can share it because it's based off of, I'm happy to share it with Jared, and he can share it with all you. I don't want to go through it right now, but what it really came down to was two things. It's $300 to $500 a month. And ultimately, if it's working perfectly and you add time to it, they would be making about $25 an hour. This is that whole time value thing. So yes, we need to get that much income because they don't tend to go away, but ultimately you also have to increase the time value proposition to keep them. Because if somebody's spending 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week to make $300 a month, at some point they're probably going to look at that and wonder if that's the best use of their time. So it's important to look at both of those. But yeah, that's the number that the industry studies have been done, 300 to 500. And it varies by market, but the formula is the same. I'll be happy to share it with Jared if he wants it, so that he can share it with all of you. Any other questions?
Gordon, another follow-up question. You mentioned about wisdom versus, I guess, exuberance and maybe social media expertise. How can we language, or how can we, as men, especially in my generation, utilize and benefit from that mentor status or that mentor provision, if you will?
Are you talking about mentoring, how social media works?
No, mentoring young men to, like you said, maybe don't make those mistakes that they might be tending to make, playing a role more of advisory.
Yeah, so I will tell you that the hardest part isn't the wisdom, it's getting connection. So I have found, working with a lot of them, that if I can't connect to them, and connection is just 3 words for me: trust, care, and help. So if they know that they can trust me, that I care about them, and that this wisdom is going to help them get what they want, whatever that might be. And in our business, in all career stuff, I don't care whether it's entrepreneur or the job, there's always 4 things that people want: lifestyle, comfort, freedom, and impact. Those are the 4. So if I can sort of connect with them where they understand I've done things they haven't do, I have wisdom that can help them grow, then they'll listen and they'll apply things. And sometimes they'll fight you. Sometimes they have to learn the hard way. But I will tell you, if you don't connect with them, I think the chance of mentorship is very, very low. And I say that I just came back from Wake Forest. I'm building their mentorship program, and we had an advisory council meeting last week. And they had 2 sort of success stories that they modeled, and both of them were 2 teams that I had mentored from the beginning. And one of the questions was, why him? Why did you listen to him? And they're like, because he was always there for us. He cared, he showed up, he offered advice that was useful to us. So when you do the connection piece and you start to build relationships, amazing things that can happen. But there's something else that happens. That connection is a 2-way thing. I can't even begin to tell you how much I've learned from that younger generation. They have a wisdom that we don't have. They have skills that we don't even know exist, and they're very good at things. And I will tell you, to me, it becomes not a mentorship, but a collaboration. I share wisdom, they share wisdom, and everybody grows through the process. And from that perspective, the other thing that I think is important for us older people, you can see the gray, I kind of fit into that. For the older people, it's important to get better at these skills. So I spend a lot of time in the digital space and the social space. I'm constantly taking classes. I have people that mentor me in this, because I know marketing is done this way, and the stronger we all get at it, the better we're going to be in any business that we do, in this business included. Yep. Anybody else?
All right. We went over, Gordon, so I'll stop the recording here.
Okay.
But just thank you so much. I'll put that on the end of the recording.